My dear respected viewers and honorable friends, united in the pursuit of the film look we stand, we learn the lens, abide by the lens, and then dissolve the lens. Alright, let's start. Today is a 28mm showdown between two well-known lenses among vintage enthusiasts. First, the plasticky but established Canon NFD f2.8, a worthy heir of the Canon NFD lineup, versus a slightly faster contender, the auto-wide-angle Vivitar 2.5, acclaimed by filmmakers for its unique flair and rendering. At least, that's what some claim. Claim I absolutely disagree with. For the record, 3 years ago, I made the review of the Vivitar 28mm in which I concluded that the lens was overhyped. I did not recommend it, and I tried to sell it, but current market prices are well below what I paid for it. We will compare everything these two have to offer and decide which one is more suited for filming. Let's start. Vivitar f2.5 ISO 400. I know I have said many weird things in this channel, and some aren't met with unanimous agreement. And one I have no regret saying is that the flare from the Vivitar is abusive. And here an example of exactly what I mean by abusive. When there are multiple sources of light and you have no control over them, the flares from the Vivitar are all over the place. There is no finesse, no aesthetic. It is an all-in-your-face kind of flare. It doesn't complement the frame, it just takes over. It distracts when it is not dominating it. I don't see how or where it qualifies as cinematic flares. Seriously, I don't see. On the other hand, the NFD doesn't flare beautifully because of these pentagonal shapes produced by the 5 aperture blades. It is not pleasing, but there is a pattern that makes them tolerable. And the coating does its job. The flare are still under control. The flare of the 28 is exactly like the one of the 50mm f1.8, which also have only 5 blades. That's a good point if you decide to work with these two for a medium and wide shot. Of course, this subject is a matter of taste, so let's keep it short and say if you are not in control of the light and you have to deal with a multitude of light sources, the Vivitar is definitely not the best choice. I always refer and prioritize the opinions of the old school over the new school. By school, I mean yesterday photographers and today's filmmaker. Nothing personal, but asking a Telsa owner for tips on buying a 1955 Porsche 550 Spider, that has never happened in history. But sometimes their criticisms are actually qualities when it comes to filming. And sometimes we are better off listening to them. Filmic, hidden gem, character-rich, cinematic flares, etc. These are the terms you hear from the new school about the Vivitar. Veteran photographers, however, stood on the other side of the spectrum regarding its merit. Chromatic aberration until f8, strong vignetting on full frame, soft edges, lack of sharpness, optically poor from 2.5 to f8, unappealing bokeh, poor flare resistance, lack of contrast in bright light, oily blade, and heavy. While for the Canon NFD, the old-timers complained about the plastic part, they found the bokeh unappealing and somewhat buzzy, also the 5-blade aperture producing some pentagonal shapes. Aside from that, the old school had nothing but good things to say about the NFD 28. The new school, however, seemed to overlook it entirely, almost as they forgot Canon ever made a 28mm in the NFD lineup. The Vivitar 28 2.5 is not a bad lens. Let's say it is capable of the best as well as the worst. Its worst it is from f2.5 to 5.6. That makes it half a good lens, I guess. Right now I will archive this shot in the best of Vivitar category. Except for the ugly autofocus fruits in the background that look cheap, it is in my opinion close to perfection. Sharpness, color, details, texture, there is nothing to criticize. Maybe the aberrations around the end, but that's about it. No need for color correction, I can just put a LUT, add some grain, then get fancy with an anamorphic emulsion and call it a day. Everything looks good, at least. When you don't have a reference for comparison, but we have the NFD for that. And if you are not BAZ, you should notice that the Vivitar is not as good as we thought. The Canon has more sharpness. There are less chromatic aberration. The out-of-focus area is cleaner. The colors are vibrant. There is more contrast. It is on the warm side, but more on colors later. And here the wear part. I am currently focusing at 60-70 cm at f2.5. Even if the NFD has the advantage, everything looks great on both lenses. But see what happens when we are focusing at 30 cm. I know you are all checking the bokeh right now, but don't get distracted, this is not the subject. We are still talking sharpness. Still at 2.5, minimum focusing distance for both lenses. The Vivitar is clearly missing in action. Look at the flower, it's soft, there are no details. At its minimum focus, the Vivitar clearly lacks some sharpness in the center, while the Canon has a better softness fall off. At 5.6, the Vivitar catch up, but still the NFD looks better. At f8, which many photographers consider the best of the Vivitar, it seems to be a draw. They have similar sharpness, but in reality, if you are on big screen, you will notice that the NFD is a teeny bit sharper, but not enough to notice a big difference.
Canon NFD f2.8 focusing to infinity.
At infinity, nothing new. It is pretty much the same story. From f2.5 to f5.6, the Canon is the clear winner. At f8, the quality of the sharpness is equal, with a very small upper hand for the NFD. But we still have to talk about the colors.
Canon NFD focusing to
These two lenses share some similarities, like the minimum focusing distance, angle of view, and magnification. But comparing the specification is a good example of how sometimes numbers and appearance can be deceiving. On paper, one would think that the Vivitar has the advantage over the NFD. 8 elements in 7 groups against 7, 6 aperture blades, only 5 for the Canon, and of course the slightly faster f2.5 aperture. All that suggests that the Vivitar has better bokeh and more sharpness. Add to that a quick look comparing the build of the Vivitar to the plastic construction and teeny dimension of the NFD, and you end up thinking that the Canon NFD is just a toy. But as you have seen for yourself, numbers on paper can be deceiving in the field. Next. Now let's talk about the colors, and we are here for a big surprise. As you had already noticed, the Vivitar has less contrast. Its colors are more cold compared to the Canon, more on the blue side. The Canon leans toward orange. Its colors are more vibrant, they have more punch, but the Vivitar is, in my opinion, better. It reproduces more colors than the NFD. I know that's a bit of stretch, but look at these two shots as proof. They are not color graded. Pay attention to the handrail and the metal steps. The NFD seems to put a kind of orange tint on everything everywhere, while the Vivitar offers more colors. You have the orange of the rust and also some blue on the edge of the step. The silver color of the handrail is more pronounced. Simply put, the Vivitar renders more color. Does this mean the Vivitar provides a wider dynamic range than the Canon NFD? I don't know. Now the only question is to know if there are other Vivitar that match this color. I have my doubts, considering that Vivitar employed many subcontractors through its history.
Previously, in the last episode.
The bokeh is... Imagine you have one white wall and somebody come and just poops some color everywhere. Splash! Yeah, it was a bit brutal, and my opinion hasn't changed much. I still do think that the Vivitar has an uninteresting bokeh. It's not ugly. It is the bare minimum aesthetic that does not complement the frame. But that does not mean that the Canon is out of criticism. At first glance, one would say that the lenses have a similar bokeh. Yes, at first glance only, but they have some distinction. Vivitar's bokeh looks more like a soup of color than a cream of colors. And I still don't see anything filmic about this soup. While the NFD remind me the 50mm f1.8, buzzy and noisy, but they are more shapies to make a good balance. However, you know, this is only my opinion. An opinion is a matter of personal preference and taste. 28mm lenses in general are not known for the bokeh, except a few exceptions like the Vivitar 28mm f1.9. So one shouldn't expect much. Maybe I am expecting way too much. There is nothing new to say that you don't already know about the build of these two. They are a perfect illustration of two eras of lens manufacturing. The Vivitar represents the 70s, period that is la crème de la crème, the pinnacle of heirloom quality lenses. And this plasticky Canon NFD serves as the ambassador of the 80s, the dawn of modern cost-effective build quality, an era that gave birth to the sanitized look that we are all now fighting against. Anyway, there's no match, the Vivitar is the beauty. However, apart from their construction, both lenses are perfectly fit for filming. They don't extend much when focusing, and their bodies are convenient for adding focusing jig. But the large focus throw of the Vivitar give it the edge in the ergonomics, something like the Mir 1B with 270 degrees of rotation. That said, it comes with some downside. At least 2/3 of the rotation is dedicated to the close focus, from 30cm mark to the 1 meter. In theory, that means it is where the most precise focusing happens. Practically, it won't matter much, as all wide-angle lenses have similar focusing proportion.
Canon NFD f5.6 focus racking test.
Sorry, but here comes the part where I must repeat myself like a CD set on repeat. But what else do you want me to tell you when we are reviewing vintage photography lenses? So here we go, but let's keep it short. Without any surprise, for 50-year-old lenses, these two lenses suffer from focus briefing. The kind of briefing that seems like a focal length that changes, meaning like a zoom. The briefing is large but clean. I did not notice anything weird, no deformation, no squeezing or shifting, nor any exposure drop. Okay les amis, that's all for me, nothing more to add, except the usual of course. All that, this is just my opinion. At the end of the day, you do whatever you want with your money. By the way, I hope you enjoyed the cartoon concept. I wanted to make this for a long time. Now it's done. Good. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time maybe. Until then, take care of you and your lenses. Alright? Bye.